She made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. But as Eleanor Bennet stepped off that stagecoach into the Montana mud, the man she'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry was nowhere to be seen. This is the true story of what happened next. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the Helena General Store, and Eleanor's carefully preserved traveling dress sank into ankle-deep mud, ruined beyond saving. Around her, 3 other mail-order brides found their waiting grooms, eager men with hopeful eyes. But no one stepped forward for Eleanor. The November wind cut through her wool coat as she stood alone, watching the other women disappear into their new lives. Where was Thomas Brennan? Had he changed his mind? Was this all a terrible mistake? Mrs. Patterson, the store owner, finally approached with pity in her eyes. "You're the Brennan bride, aren't you?" Thomas sent word Storm trapped some cattle in the high country. "He'll be here tomorrow." Tomorrow. Eleanor swallowed the panic rising in her throat. She'd burned every bridge in Boston for this. At 27, she'd been deemed too old and unmarried to teach. After 6 years nursing her dying mother, she had nothing left but an empty boarding house room and pitying stares. The advertisement had promised something different. Widower with child seeks capable woman for marriage. Must be strong, sensible, and willing to work. No romance. No false promises. Just honest work and a fresh start. But what if tomorrow never came? The next morning, Eleanor dressed in her best wool dress, her hands trembling as she pinned her hair. What if he took one look at her angular face and changed his mind? She wasn't beautiful, she knew that. But she was capable, strong, educated. She hoped that would be enough. When the store door opened, the man who entered seemed to fill the entire frame. Tall, weathered, with grey-blue eyes that swept the room until they landed on her. "Miss Bennet." He removed his hat, revealing silver-touched dark hair. "I apologize for yesterday." Eleanor lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "I understand ranch life comes with uncertainties." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps approval. He studied her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but instead, she felt seen for the first time in years. "You're taller than I expected," he said finally. "You're older than your letter suggested." The words escaped before she could stop them. For a heartbeat, tension crackled between them. Then Thomas Brennan laughed, a rusty, genuine sound that transformed his weathered face. "Fair enough." He stepped closer. "I'm 34. My wife died 4 years ago. I need help. I won't lie about that. But I'm offering marriage, a home, and honest work. I won't pretend I'm looking for romance. I need a partner. Sarah needs a mother. Can you be that?" The directness should have shocked her. Instead, something settled deep in Eleanor's chest, a sense of rightness she hadn't felt since before her mother's illness. "I can," she said firmly. "I don't know ranching, but I learn fast, and I don't run from hard work." Thomas's eyes held hers. "When would you like the wedding?" Eleanor's heart hammered. This was it. The moment that would define the rest of her life. She could say no, return to Boston, face the familiar suffocation of a life without purpose. Or she could leap. "Today," she said. "If you're willing." 3 hours later, Eleanor wore a stranger's ring and sat beside her new husband in a wagon heading into the wilderness. The Montana landscape stretched endlessly. So different from Boston's crowded streets. Out here, the sky went on forever, and the silence pressed against her ears. When she shivered, Thomas pulled a heavy buffalo robe over her lap without a word. That small gesture, practical, thoughtful, made her throat tight with unexpected emotion. "Tell me about Sarah," she said, breaking the silence. Thomas's jaw clenched. "She's been angry since Rebecca died. Angry at me, at God, at the world. She's going to test you. I want you to know that up front. I expected nothing less." When the ranch appeared over the hill, Eleanor's breath caught. The house was substantial, well-built, surrounded by barns and outbuildings. Smoke curled from the chimney, and on the porch stood a small girl with eyes full of rage. "You brought her," Sarah said flatly as they approached. "Sarah." Thomas's voice held a warning. This is Mrs. Brennan. She's my wife now, and you'll treat her with respect. The girl's expression didn't change. Mama was Mrs. Brennan. The words hit like a slap, but Eleanor kept her face neutral. This wounded child had every right to her anger. Inside, Thomas showed her to the bedroom. I'll sleep in the barn until we figure things out. I won't force anything. You'll have privacy. Then he was gone, and Eleanor was alone in a dead woman's house, wearing a dead woman's title, trying to mother a child who hated her. She could have cried. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and went to work. In the kitchen, she found neglect dishes piled in the basin, flour dusting every surface. She washed, scrubbed, and inventoried the pantry. When Sarah appeared in the doorway, Eleanor didn't look up from peeling potatoes. I'm making stew. Does your father like biscuits? A long, hostile silence. Then, yeah. Good. I'll make some. Sarah drifted closer, suspicious. You really lost your ma. When I was 17. Consumption, like your mother. Were you mad? Eleanor finally looked up, meeting those wounded eyes. I was furious. At God, at my mother for leaving me, at the world. I stayed angry for almost 2 years. What made you stop? I realized being angry didn't bring her back. It just made everything harder. Eleanor resumed peeling. But feeling it was important. Don't let anyone tell you you shouldn't be angry, Sarah. You just lost your mother. You have every right to every feeling you're having. Something crumbled in Sarah's face just for a moment before she rebuilt her walls. I can make biscuits better than you probably can. Mama taught me. Then you should make them. I'd like that. They worked in silence after that. But it was a different kind of silence. And when Sarah's biscuits came out of the oven light, fluffy, perfect, Eleanor saw the first hint of pride break through the girl's grief. That night, the three of them sat at the table together. It wasn't comfortable, wasn't easy, but it was a beginning. 2 weeks later, a blizzard trapped them inside for days. With nowhere to hide, nowhere to escape, they were forced to truly see each other. They played cards. Read aloud. Sarah sketched horses by the fire while Thomas repaired tack and Eleanor mended mountains of clothes. On the second day, Sarah fell asleep clutching her sketchpad. Eleanor lifted her so light, all bones and determination, and carried her to bed. Mama used to sing, Sarah murmured, half asleep. Eleanor's heart cracked. I don't know the songs she sang. That's okay. You smell different. Like roses. Mama smelled like lavender. When Eleanor returned to the main room, Thomas stood by the fire, his back rigid. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, the kind of crying men did when they thought no one was watching. Thomas. He turned away, scrubbing at his face. Sorry. Seeing you carry her like that, Rebecca used to. His voice broke. Eleanor moved closer, driven by instinct. Tell me about her. I can't. Why not? Because I'm married to you now, and it's not right to. Thomas. She waited until he looked at her. She was Sarah's mother. Your wife. Pretending she didn't exist won't help any of us heal. Tell me about her. So he did. Standing by the fire while the blizzard howled, Thomas told her about Rebecca. The rancher's daughter he'd married at 22, who'd loved this land fiercely, who'd taught Sarah to ride before she could walk. How consumption had stolen her breath inch by inch until she died gasping, terrified, far too young. I couldn't save her, he said finally. I had money for doctors, tried every treatment. Nothing worked. I held her hand and watched her die, and I couldn't do a damn thing. That wasn't your fault. Eleanor did something she'd never done with any man. She reached out and took his hand. His rough, warm fingers closed around hers. You're raising a strong daughter. You're keeping this ranch running. You're surviving. That's not failure, Thomas. That's courage. He stared at their joined hands. How are you not afraid of this? Of me, of this life? I am afraid, she admitted. Terrified I'll fail. That Sarah will never accept me. That you'll regret bringing me here. But I'm more afraid of the life I was living in Boston or not living. At least here, I'm trying. You're more than trying. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You've made this house a home again. And he swallowed hard. I look forward to coming inside now. To see you. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then a tremendous crack split the air. Through the window, they saw the barn roof collapse under the snow's weight. The horses. Thomas was already grabbing his coat. I'm coming with you. It's too dangerous. You can't move that beam alone. Eleanor was pulling on her boots. I'm stronger than I look. They fought through waist-deep snow to the barn. Inside, a fallen beam had pinned Willow, the grey mare, who thrashed in panic. 2 other horses circled, eyes rolling with fear. I need you to calm the other horses while I lift this beam, Thomas said. Eleanor had never been comfortable around horses. But these animals were Sarah's world, Thomas's livelihood, their survival. She forced herself forward, speaking in what she hoped was a soothing voice. To her surprise, the bay settled, allowing her to stroke his neck. On 3, Thomas positioned himself at the beam. 1, 2, 3. They heaved together. The beam shifted an inch. Another. Willow scrambled free, limping but alive. Thomas examined her leg quickly. Bruised, not broken. She'll heal. He looked at Eleanor with something like wonder. You really are strong. By the time they fought back to the house, both were soaked and shaking with cold. Sarah was pacing by the fire. She saw them and burst into tears. I heard the crash. I thought you weren't coming back. Eleanor gathered the girl into her arms, and for the first time, Sarah didn't pull away. She clung to Eleanor, sobbing, all her walls finally crumbling. I can't lose anyone else, Sarah choked out. I can't. You won't, Eleanor whispered into her hair, meeting Thomas's eyes over Sarah's head. We're not going anywhere. We're here. We're family. The crisis came a week later. Eleanor was hanging laundry when 3 rough-looking men rode up. Thomas was in the far pasture. She was alone. Where's Brennan? The leader demanded, looking her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. Working. Can I give him a message? We're taking 10 head of cattle for the debt he owes. Eleanor had been managing the accounts for weeks. She knew every debt, every creditor. My husband owes no debts. Your husband? The man laughed. The little mail order bride. Well, Mrs. Brennan, your husband bought feed from our boss and never paid. You're lying, Eleanor said flatly. And you're trespassing. Leave now. Or you'll what? A gunshot cracked the air. Everyone froze. Sarah stood on the porch, holding Thomas's rifle, too big for her, but steady enough. She'll let me shoot you, Sarah said calmly. And I won't miss from here. The men's hands moved toward their weapons. Eleanor's heart stopped. Then Thomas's voice rang out from the barn. Suddenly he was there, his own rifle raised. The lady said leave. You've got 10 seconds before I start shooting. The standoff held for one eternal moment. Then the leader spat in the dirt and remounted. This isn't over, Brennan. Yes, it is. Come back and I'll have the sheriff waiting. They rode off, and Eleanor's legs nearly gave out. Thomas caught her elbow while Sarah ran to them both. I know I wasn't supposed to touch your rifle, Sarah said through tears. But they were threatening Eleanor. You did exactly right, Thomas said, pulling his daughter close. Then he looked at Eleanor. Are you hurt? No. She tried to smile. Sarah saved me. We saved each other, Sarah said, reaching for Eleanor's hand. That night, Thomas found Eleanor on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. You should be inside, he said, but sat beside her anyway. I needed air. I keep thinking about what could have happened. But it didn't. He shifted closer, and she could feel his warmth. Eleanor, what you said to those men calling me your husband, standing up to them. You could have stayed inside, stayed safe. This is my home too. My family. The words came out fiercely. I'm not going to hide while people threaten what's mine. Thomas turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. When I sent for a bride, I thought I was looking for help, someone to cook and clean and care for Sarah. He raised his hand, hesitating, then gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. But you're not just helping. You're everything. Her heart felt too large for her chest. I know I am. With you. With Sarah. With this life we're building. I asked you to marry me for all the wrong reasons, Thomas said quietly. Let me ask again for the right ones. Eleanor Bennett Brennan, will you be my wife? Not in name only, but in truth. Will you build this life with me, raise Sarah together, grow old watching sunsets from this porch? Yes, she was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes to all of it. When he kissed her, it was nothing like that brief, formal brush at their wedding. This was real and warm and full of promise, a kiss that tasted like Montana wind and new beginnings. The next Sunday, the preacher came to the ranch. This time, they married with Sarah watching, with their whole hearts open. When Thomas said I do, his voice broke with emotion. When Eleanor slipped a ring onto his finger, one she'd bought in secret, her hands trembled with joy, not fear. And when Sarah asked, "Can I call you Ma?" Not instead of my first mama, but just also. Eleanor's tears fell freely. I would be honored. Winter deepened across Montana, but inside the Brennan ranch house, warmth prevailed. They were a family now, not bound by blood or practical arrangement, but by choice. By love discovered in unexpected places. By the courage it took to open broken hearts and try again. On cold nights, when the wind howled and snow piled high against the windows, 3 people sat by the fire, knowing they'd found something rare and precious. A home. A family. And love that had grown from the rocky soil of Montana Territory, as hearty and enduring as the mountains themselves. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step off a stagecoach into the unknown and trust that what you're building is worth more than what you left behind. Eleanor Bennett took that leap. And it changed 3 lives forever.